On the evening of May 2nd, 2011, President Barack Obama walked to a podium in the White House to make a statement on national and international news channels that forever altered the course of history. For most Americans, this announcement was met with relief, justice, and a bit of triumph. In 1945, Time magazine marked major victories in World War II with special covers featuring Hitler and Japan's rising sun symbol, both crossed out. In 2011, following the news of Osama bin Laden's death, Time used the same approach for their cover, placing a red X across his face. Most people know a little about bin Laden. They know he was the central figure of the 9/11 attacks. A smaller portion may remember that he was also behind the deadly 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania that killed over 200 people. Most of them were not Americans. That's about it. But how does a person become a terrorist mastermind and the world's most wanted man? Welcome to History on Fleek. Today, we will tell you about Osama bin Laden's reign of terror and death in a hail of U.S. Navy SEAL bullets. A terrorist mastermind. Many extremists, Muslim or not, religious or not, come from poor, desperate backgrounds and are often led to extremist views and actions out of desperation. Sometimes, a distorted sense of patriotism or religious zeal will lead people to a belief system that essentially declares we are right and everyone else is wrong. This happened in Germany and Japan in the 1930s. And the Soviet Union throughout the 20th century. Bin Laden was a true believer in the rightness of the view of Islam in which he grew up, but he was definitely not poor. He was born March 10, 1957, into one of the wealthiest families in Saudi Arabia. His father was one of the most prominent builders in the country and region. Bin Laden was born into and lived in rarefied air. Through his father and later his charismatic and zealous personality, he knew many of the Saudi royal family, the upper ranks of the Saudi military, and the community of intense believers in the country and eventually the Middle East. Bin Laden's father had had 52 children through 22 wives throughout his life, something permitted under Islam and especially in the Wahhabi sect, in which he and most of the Saudi ruling class were a part. Some of Osama bin Laden's brothers led the lives of the typical upper-class Saudi playboys, private jets, women from all over the world, estates in other countries, and much else. Still, Osama bin Laden found his calling and lifestyle in the conservative Islam in which he was raised. Bin Laden was a student at the most prestigious university in Saudi Arabia, King Abdul Aziz University in Jeddah, when he met Abdullah Azzam, a Palestinian Sunni Muslim cleric who taught at the university. Azzam believed in spreading his brand of Islam throughout the world and waging first a defensive jihad, or holy war, against foreigners and foreign influence in Muslim lands, and then extending that conflict to other parts of the world, with the end goal being the conversion of the entire world to Islam through force or argument. Azzam and many other Muslims, extremist or not, were enraged by the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. The Soviets moved in to prop up the government of their puppet communist leaders, Hafizullah Amin and Babrak Kemal, whose government was under assault by various groups within the country, most of whom believed in a radical, militant Islam. In Saudi Arabia, Azzam, like influential Muslim clerics in other countries, called for all Islamic countries and all Muslims to support what became known as the Mujahideen, or Holy Warriors, fighting against the Soviets. Luckily for Azzam and the cause of the Mujahideen, Osama bin Laden, personally very wealthy, had access to much more wealth and had powerful and even more wealthy friends in the Saudi government, which is the same thing as the Saudi royal family. In the 1980s, bin Laden was one of the most prominent backers of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Many, but not all of these fighters later joined in an alliance that became known as the Taliban, which later provided bin Laden and the organization he founded, Al-Qaeda, a relatively safe place from which to operate after they were expelled from Sudan, where the organization began in the early and mid-1990s. Bin Laden created Al-Qaeda, which means the base, in response to what he saw as the Western invasion of the Muslim Holy Land, which began with the First Gulf War and the United States establishment of a permanent presence in Kuwait and a number of military bases in Saudi Arabia. In 1993, bin Laden witnessed the effects of the near-successful destruction of the World Trade Center in New York when another Muslim fundamentalist group, led by Ramzi Youssef, a nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the planners of the 9/11 attack on the same buildings. It was this attack and the success of the al-Qaeda attacks in Africa that convinced bin Laden that large-scale attacks against Western and specifically American targets were possible, even within the borders of the USA. On August 20, 1998, President Clinton ordered a cruise missile strike on suspected al-Qaeda bases in Sudan, killing a number of men and destroying important equipment, but narrowly missing bin Laden and other al-Qaeda leaders. Al-Qaeda also carried out the much-publicized attack on the USS Cole, an American naval vessel, while it was in port in Yemen on October 12, 2000, killing 15 American sailors. Post 9/11, the manhunt is on. On December 16, 2001, U.S. intelligence intercepted radio signals from the Tora Bora region of Afghanistan, near the Pakistan border, which were determined to have been bin Laden's voice. The next day, the United States began a series of massive airstrikes on the mountainous region, which was riddled with caves and tunnels believed to be hiding bin Laden and much of the al-Qaeda leadership. The U.S. then invaded Afghanistan, which it had determined correctly as the base of al-Qaeda and bin Laden. The invasion had two goals: to destroy al-Qaeda and bin Laden, and to overthrow the cruel and oppressive Taliban regime, which had supported and hidden him. But bin Laden escaped the American airstrikes and went into even deeper hiding, moving between the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Over the next 8 years, the United States seemed more interested in toppling the regime of Saddam Hussein in Iraq than in finding bin Laden. Though the CIA and American military intelligence kept a lookout for him, the resources devoted to finding the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks dwindled, especially in comparison to the money and treasure spent in the war against the Taliban and seeking to establish a stable Iraq in the face of an intense sectarian and anti-US insurgency. Between 2002 and 2011, bin Laden became more of a shadowy figure and figurehead in Muslim fundamentalist circles. While he occasionally issued a statement praising terrorist actions around the world, like those in Bali in October 2002 and Jakarta in 2004, his role was mainly in funding al-Qaeda affiliates around the world, as the organization became more decentralized to avoid a catastrophic strike on its leadership, which would perhaps put it out of business. By the time of the election of Barack Obama in 2008, the Bush administration believed it had essentially neutralized bin Laden and al-Qaeda. Obama made it one of his administration's priorities and a campaign promise. Operation Neptune Spear. In September 2010, using human intelligence on the ground, HUMINT, surveillance photos, and other reports, the CIA finally got a solid idea of where bin Laden might be, a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, that had been built about 5 years before. By spring, close observation from space, the sky, and the ground led the CIA to believe that bin Laden was indeed at the compound, and in March, the SEALs began intense training on mock-ups in both the United States and at Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. The unit assigned to the mission to capture or kill bin Laden was the United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group, or NSWDG. It is also referred to as DevGru for Development Group, but the world knows the unit simply as SEAL Team 6. Throughout March and April, President Obama and his national security team weighed the options as agents on the ground kept tabs on the compound. On April 29th, Obama gave the operation the green light. Obviously, one of the most important aspects of the operation was secrecy. Not only operational security at the highest levels, but tactical security as well. And not just for the obvious reason of not wanting to alert the people in the compound. Bin Laden's refuge was inside Pakistan's border, a somewhat iffy American ally whose military and government were not only infiltrated by Muslim militants, but which was very sensitive about violations of its borders, even from an ally. Worse still, Abbottabad was a military town, built around a Pakistani military academy and the homes of dozens of retired officers. Despite this, the order was given. Executing a high-stakes operation like the raid on bin Laden's compound requires meticulous logistical preparations. This included securing aircraft for transportation, coordinating with air support units, and ensuring the availability of necessary equipment such as night vision goggles, weapons, and communication systems. The operation had to be executed with precision and efficiency, leaving no room for errors. Execution of the raid. On May 2, 2011, under the cover of darkness, the SEAL team began their historic mission. Newly developed stealth helicopters carried the 24 SEALs into Pakistan. Not only were they designed to defeat radar, the copters were also built to reduce noise. The raiders took different routes to the compound for security. The operation involved a two-phase approach, with an initial assault team conducting the main assault and a backup team providing support and security. The assault team included a highly trained war dog, who would warn the SEALs of anyone hiding, and once the interior of the house was secured, provide an early warning of anyone approaching the walls of the compound from the town. The primary worry were units of the Pakistan military approaching and a firefight ensuing between the forces of two nuclear-armed nations. For a brief moment, it appeared that the raid might be doomed or forced to abort when one of the helicopters clipped a compound wall upon landing, and though it landed safely, it came to an angled rest against the compound walls and was sabotaged by the SEALs before they exited on the second chopper. Upon reaching the compound, the SEALs swiftly breached the walls and engaged in close-quarters combat. The team moved systematically through the compound, clearing rooms and neutralizing any resistance they encountered. Their primary objective was to locate and eliminate bin Laden. After an intense search, bin Laden was located on the upper floor of the compound and engaged in a firefight. In the ensuing confrontation, bin Laden was shot and killed. With the mission's primary objective achieved, the SEAL team extracted from the compound, ensuring the security of any sensitive materials and equipment they recovered. They also gathered valuable intelligence for future operations. Bin Laden's body was taken back to the American headquarters ship, the carrier USS Carl Vinson in the Persian Gulf, where it was identified twice, with DNA evidence proving without a shadow of a doubt that the body was that of bin Laden. He was given a Muslim funeral service, and a traditional prayer, translated into Arabic by a native speaker, was read over the body, which was then buried at sea to avoid his remains or gravesite from becoming a pilgrimage site or rallying point for terrorists. The successful raid on bin Laden's compound marked a significant victory in the global fight against terrorism and hopefully provided closure to the families of the victims of the September 11th attacks. This has been History on Fleek. See you next time.